So in this chapter, we're talking about key signature. So this is chapter 6 in your Fundamentals of Music book. The key signature are the sharps and flats that you'll sometimes see written after the clef. Now, there are of course the key signatures that don't have any sharps or flats like C major or A minor, but besides that, all the rest of your key signatures are going to have some sharps or some flats in it, just like we figured out in chapter 4 and 5 when we were building those scales with those half and whole steps. Again, the key signature is written right after the clefs, and this tells you which sharps or which flats the musician is going to play during the piece. So in this piece right here, we have the sharp on F and C in the treble clef, and you'll notice it's the same F and C in the bass clef. So depending on the instrument, now this might be the piano with the grand staff. If it was an instrument that just was reading treble clef, you'd read it in treble, or if it was just a bass clef instrument, it would be written just in the bass. So since this has an F and a C sharp in it, that means that when I see my notes in my song, whenever I have an F or if I had a C over here, I would really be playing those as an F or a C, or I would be singing them as an F or a C sharp. Now, in the piece, again, if it was just written as a plain old F or a plain old C, or even if it was this F way up here, or if it was a high C way up here, even though there's not a sharp written on those notes, since they're in the key signature, they would be played or sung as those F or C sharps. Now, if in the song there happened to be a natural in front of that C, that natural cancels out the key signature. So when you're playing or singing along, if you saw a natural in there, you would play or sing that as the C natural. When the bar line hits in the piece, that kind of gets reset. So even though there's a natural right here after the bar line, if we had another C over here, we would then refer and we would go back to, we kind of reset to what the key signature is. So this would still be played again as a C sharp. Sometimes in a song, the composer might put a sharp there just to remind you that it is sharp again, since you just played or sang it as a natural, but it's not even required to be there. So again, refer to that key signature. If it's a really hard key signature, that's probably when I start messing up on the piano, like if it has 6 or 7 flats in it, or if it has a C flat, which I really have to play as a B on the piano, that's probably when I'm messing up. But just remember that that's what the key signature is. Now what I'm going to show you now is the tricks when you have your key signature to finding out what key you're in, because sometimes you're going to need to know that. So the trick for when it's a sharp key signature, and those of you that were in choir might have learned that the last sharp to the right you can think of as T, and then the next note going up is where your do is. If you think about do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do, T is the 7th scale degree, and then that do is back to your 8th or back to your tonic. So what that means is that this last sharp to the right, if you go up a half step from that last sharp to the right, that's what your key is. Every single sharp key signature. So if this last sharp right here, well, let's refer back and think about what letter that's on. And that's on a space. So that's on F, A, that's on a C. Now that's C sharp. If you go up a half step from C sharp, what note are you on? You're on, and you can also think about it as the next line or space up from that last sharp. So you're on D, so this then is the key of D. It works the same way if you're reading bass clef. This is all cows eat grass, so that's a C sharp. Go up a half step from there, and you're on your D. Let's do a couple others just to practice this trick, and then really you're just going to memorize that trick, and then you can do it if you ever don't have your key signatures memorized, which you're obviously welcome to do, and you need to figure out what your key is. If it's F, C, G sharp, the last sharp to the right is what? G sharp, I just said that. And remember, it's not a G, because that's what some students will do. They'll think, okay, the last sharp is G, so this must be the key of G sharp. We don't really even have a key of G sharp that we're going to be talking about. That's not really a valid key signature that we learn. So a trick to remember also is that the sharp key signatures, the ones with sharps in them, they're all pretty much plain letters. Okay, now C is no sharps, no flats. F we're going to learn in a little while. It's kind of an anomaly. But all the rest of the keys, D, E, G, A, B, those plain letters are the keys that have sharps in them. And then also the keys of F sharp and C sharp are the keys that all have sharps in them. So that's just a little tip to remember. So if this last sharp to the right here is G sharp, and we go up a half step from that, what key am I in? I'm in the key of A. Let's do one that's a little bit more tricky. How about if we had F, C, G, D, A sharp? If my last sharp to the right is A sharp, and I go up a half step, what am I going to be on? I'm going to be on B, okay? Now the real tricky one is, what if it's F, C, G, D, A? What if my last sharp to the right is an E sharp? Okay, think about what enharmonic tone is E sharp. And if you don't remember the word enharmonic, that's when there are two different letter names for the same pitch that sounds out loud, or the same key on the piano. So E sharp would be the same as what on the piano? Think about it. E sharp would be the same as F, okay? So if we then go up a half step from that F, what are we on? We're on F sharp. So this right here would be the key of F sharp. And it works the same way when you get to the one with all the sharps in it, which is when the last sharp is B sharp, because B sharp on the piano is your C, and then if you go up a half step from that, you have C sharp. I always just remember, so this one right here would be my C sharp. I just always remember that C sharp, everything is sharped, and F, the key of F sharp, everything is sharped except for B. You can just memorize that. All right, so that's the rule for the sharps. Now you'll notice when I was putting those sharps up here, I was putting them in a specific order. And this is where they will always appear, okay? So when there is a key that only has one sharp, it's always going to be that F, and it always is on that particular top line as my F. The second sharp is always C, so if there's a key with two sharps, it's always F, C. Third sharp is always G. Fourth sharp is always D. So again, if a key had four sharps, it would be those first four, etc. They're always right here, and the order of sharps is, all right, there's many different ways to memorize this. The sentence that's in your book, I think it's flying, either clowns or cows. Flying clowns get drunk at every bar. An easy one to remember. You can make up your own, and in fact, your homework asks you to make up your own, so be creative with that. So what that means, again, this is the order of sharps as they always appear in the key signature. So if you memorize this, you'll know. So if you're ever looking at this and you're thinking, what is that crazy sharp way up there? What letter is that on? Well, just remember, and you can refer back to flying clowns get, so that you would know that that third sharp or that last sharp would be your G sharp. Okay? So again, the trick is, just the short little trick, look at the last sharp to the right. Remember that that is a sharp, so if the last sharp to the right was G sharp, go up a half step from that, and that is your tonic. That is your key. So if we were talking about the one that had four sharps in it, which would be F, C, G, D sharp, my last sharp is D sharp. I go up a half step. What's my tonic? What's my keynote? E. The key of E, or the scale of E, would be drawn like this. Okay, so this is kind of what you were doing in the last chapter, well, really chapter 4 when you did major scales. But now the sharps are all written here in the key signature. If they weren't, and you figured out we walked home when we walked home, you would end up with these sharps, I promise. So when you would start on E and you went up a whole step, you would be getting F sharp. When you started on that F sharp and went up a whole step, you would have G sharp. From G sharp to A, that's my half step, so I don't need to add anything there. From A to B, that's a whole step. From B, when I go up a whole step, I need to put a sharp on there. From C sharp, when you go up a whole step, have to put a D sharp on there. From D sharp to E, is that a half? It is, so I did it right. Now this is kind of redundant, so we would either want to have it here, and we wouldn't need it here. But again, now we're doing it the way normal music is written. We're not writing it in as we go. We're going to write in our sharps or flats or whatever at the beginning to signify what flats or what sharps are within that particular scale. Okay? So that was the trick for the sharps. And memorize that. If you want to go ahead and do your homework as far as what the sharp keys are on that worksheet 13 while you think about that rule, go ahead and do that before you have to memorize and think about the rule or the trick for the flat keys. So the flat keys, now here's two flats right there in this key. I drew that flat right there, kind of funky, so let me fix that one. But the trick for the flat keys is that you look at the second to last flat, and that is your key. Now, if my second to last flat, that means I'm going from the right and I'm looking at the second to last one. This one only has two, so this is the second to last. This is the key of what then? Every good boy, B, and here's what you have to remember, it's B flat. Because remember, we just learned that the key of B is one that has sharps in it. So all the flat keys, the tonic is going to be flatted. The only exception is kind of the anomaly, which is the key of F, which only has a B flat. So you can just think, well, you know what, there's not a second to last one, so I can't use the trick, and that might help you remember that F is the weirdo, which you don't want to get in this class, remember? So F is the anomaly that only has one flat, but all the rest of the flat keys have the flatted tonic. So if we had B, E, A, what's my second to last flat here? Now remember, they're kind of going zigzaggy, but you just have to think about the second to last one from the right. It would be this one here. So my key would be what? F, A, C, E. Is that right? The key of E? No. Key of E, flat. Okay, so they're all flatted. B, E, A, D. What would my second to last one be now? It would be A flat. B, E, A, D, G comes next. What would my second to last one be now? D flat, etc. That's all you have to do, and then remember that it is a flatted tonic, or the keynote starts on a flat, okay? You'll notice that I was putting these in a particular order as well. The order of the flats goes B, E, A, D, G, C, F, okay? And they're always on these particular lines and spaces. You're not really gonna have to do that on your own too much, but just remember that they're always in that particular spot. So the order of the flats, it's actually what we just learned, but backwards. So see, it was flying clowns get drunk at every bar, but it's backwards. What one of my students told me one time, which kind of stuck with me, was Bede, go call Fred. I don't know why, but we remember that and we laughed about that quite a lot that day. But Bede, go call Fred is the order of flats as they always appear in the key signature. So remember this, and that will help you once you start learning the circle of fifths, which will come a little bit later. That order of flats will help you out as far as knowing how many flats and where to put them when you memorize the number of flats or sharps within each key signature.